Two. Okay, guys, welcome to Tuesday's impromptu online lecture. I'm going to try to keep this pretty short so that it uploads without any issues and you're all able to access it. So today we are going to be talking about some of the articles that you all read for homework. And mainly I want you to write down your answers to these questions listed here. And you can write them down based on one of the articles that you read for homework, whichever one is your favorite or you reacted to the strongest. And then just answer these in your own notebooks. I won't be collecting it or anything like that. It's just for us to practice responding to a text like we will be doing in A1. So the focus of today is really quoting and paraphrasing. And in order to talk about that, I think it's important to preface this with our plagiarism policy, which we went over in the start of class. But that the main thing that I want you all to take away from this is that whether it is intentional or unintentional, it's still considered plagiarism by the university and will be treated in the same way. So all of the things listed here, including, buying a paper online and using it as your own, submitting someone else's work as your own, another student, or using work from a previous class, anything like that is considered plagiarism, and it's obvious plagiarism, but there are also unintentional instances where you can forget to attribute your work to someone else's original ideas. So it's important that we know how to correctly quote and paraphrase in order to be successful in this class. And this is just a statement of academic integrity. It is pulled directly from your syllabus, so I won't take time to read it out loud right now, but I do want to note that you are required to include the honor pledge, which is listed here at the very bottom on each one of your major writing assignments for this class. So keep in mind that you are stating that you've done this without any help or without stealing anyone else's ideas. So while we go over this lecture today, I want you to think about why it's important to quote and paraphrase and give credit to other people for their work. And think about how you would view a work that has been taken from someone else without giving them credit for it. And as you're thinking about all of these things, also think about what CSU considers plagiarism and academic dishonesty. So I think it's really helpful to look at these things with examples. So in this instance, this is an example of someone who plagiarized because it looks like it's unintentional because in the beginning sentence they mention the authors and they mention the text that this is coming from, but then they sort of forget to do that in the last two sentences where it looks like this person is presenting these ideas as their own ideas when in actuality they are someone else's ideas. So let's take a look at how we would fix that. So here we have this corrected paragraph that gives credit to the original source, and it's really easy. They simply use they claim, which is underlined here in blue, to attribute this information back to the original authors that were cited in the first sentence. They also use quotation marks to indicate a partial quotation saying that this is something that these authors have said. This isn't something that I'm saying. So with quoting directly, you want to make sure that you're taking a specific statement, you're not changing it, you're taking it word for word, and you want to quote directly when you think that something the author said is really memorable and you couldn't say it any better yourself, or you couldn't convey the meaning without changing it enough. So that's when you'll want to make sure that you're using direct quotes from the author, and you'll always want to attribute those back to that author using author tags, which we'll talk about shortly. With paraphrasing, it's what you're going to be doing most of the time in your summaries, and you're essentially restating ideas and information that you found in the original text, but you're putting it in your own words. So you're essentially saying, I can shorten this and get my understanding across to my readers without having to say word for word what the author's saying. So with both of these, you do want to make sure you're incorporating author tags, and we've talked a little bit about these, but essentially what they are is you're mentioning the author's last name, and you're including, some kind of verb about how the author is saying this. So you can say states or claims or says, but you do want to change up the verbiage because you don't want it to be boring or to be repetitive. And we'll take a look at some examples of that in the next slide. So here, I'll just read the very first one. Edmondson states, we have the author's last name, we have the verb, and then we have the direct quotation of what the author is saying. So it says, to get an education, you're probably going to have to fight against the institution that you find yourself in, no matter how prestigious it may be. We end the quotes there, and then we have a parenthesis with the page number where this was found, so that if your reader wants to go and look for it themselves, they can do so. And one thing that I will note is that author tags can get repetitive. So here are some ideas for adding variety. You can say the author then points out, or you can say he cites a study in which. The point is that you're changing it up and that you are still making sure to ultimately attribute those ideas to that author. So I want you guys to practice this on your own. Use your phone or your laptop to look up song lyrics to a song that best describes your life, and write down the song title and the artist, and then identify a line or a stanza that stands out to you the most, and write this quote down. If it's really long, you can just jot down the first couple of lines, but the point is that you'll be paraphrasing that stanza of the song using the strategies that we discussed in today's class, and make sure that you use an author tag. So in this case, the author is the songwriter, or the person who is ultimately singing the song. So you want to indicate, how they're saying it. Use some kind of a verb, whether they proclaim something or, whatever it is. Make sure you're including that as well. So here are some quick tips for how to paraphrase without plagiarizing. One technique that I really recommend is to read the passage carefully a few times to identify its main points, and then just set it aside and try rewriting those main points in your own words without looking at the original. So hopefully setting aside will help you just forget about the exact words that the author used and be able to put it in your own words. So another thing you can do is when you're finished reading, you can set it aside, move on, do something else, and then come back to it and try to, recollect those points that the author has made. So hopefully that'll make it easier to use your own words versus the author's exact words. Another thing we want to talk about when quoting and paraphrasing is how important it is to contextualize quotes. So context is just giving your reader the surrounding circumstances around an instance or around a text or quote. So in this case, looking at this example, there's a text message that says, "Yeah, okay, I will." And really you have no idea what this text message is talking about unless you get some questions answered, like who is saying this? Which could be amended with an author tag. You also want to know what it is referring to and what the situation they're responding to is. So let's take a look at some examples of how you can actually contextualize a quote so that your readers can better understand it. And this is going to become especially useful as you're working on A1. We did look at an example on Thursday where a student just dropped in a random quote, and we were all pretty confused about what it was trying to accomplish because we didn't have the context around that quote. So Here are some examples of how you can contextualize things. So this one, first one reads, in response to my warning about traffic, my sister said, don't worry. So before we get the actual quotation, which is don't worry, we get told who is saying it. We know that it's the speaker's sister, and we get told what it is referencing. So it's in response to the speaker's warning about traffic. So it's really important to make sure that you give your audience that kind of background information, and feel free to look at those other examples listed there as well. One thing that I want you all to practice on your own in your notebooks is to take a quote from any article in your Healthy State Reader, but make sure to select one that requires additional information. And I want you to write that quote out in your own words, and then contextualize it using the strategy that you just introduced. So tell us who is saying this, what they're saying this in response to, and why they're saying it essentially. Explain that quote to us so that we understand what's going on. And homework is going to be posted on Canvas week 3 for Tuesday. You are welcome to take a look at that. Anything that needs to be turned in there will be a slot created for that you can turn it in through. And I will be doing another one of these online lectures on Thursday, and then hopefully Tuesday we'll return to in-person classes, but I'll keep you all posted on that. Feel free to email me with any questions, and thanks for tuning in.